My name is Jeroen van Duffelen. Next to me is Mark-Jan.
Mark-Jan Harte.
And we've been working in the AI space now in radiology for several years. So we want to first touch base upon where do we come from, where we are today, and then where is AI going to go over the next couple of years, just to give you an insight and ideas about, what can you expect? So, Mark-Jan, the first steps, what we've seen over the past years.
Yes, well, if you want to understand the future, you have to start with the past, right?
Looking back.
So, a very short look back, a couple of years. We all know that Geoff Hinton made a very infamous suggestion that we should stop training radiologists because they would be replaced by computers in a couple of years, and everything would be done with AI. Well, we are working in this field. We've been working on it since the beginning of almost 5 years. I can tell you with a high degree of certainty that that is not true, and that is not going to be true. AI has a very good place, and we'll talk about it, what we think that place is and how that will evolve. But human element in that is going to remain critical. So I think there's been a lot of hype around this, is that the things that AI can do, and you have this Gartner hype cycle that you have a lot of expectations, then you get disappointed, and then at the end you get something that is actually productive. And I think that is where we are moving towards. But it's also gone very fast, right? If you look at, say, when we started 5 years ago, there was only some research papers about ImageNet and image recognition. And if you fast forward to now, where we actually have systems in clinical practice that are used by doctors on a daily basis, that actually help them do their pattern recognition, so recognize lesions or measure them in a faster and more accurate way that they have been able to do so far. So I think we've already achieved some things, but when you're looking at where it's going to go in the next 5 years, as the subject of the talk, I think we can do a lot more.
Yeah. So we've seen a lot of companies and a lot of research happening. We've seen a lot of questions about where AI could go accuracy-wise, but right now we actually have solutions that are out there. But what did AI not bring? Where were promises that haven't happened yet?
Well, as I said, massive job losses for radiologists. I think they're one of the most sought after jobs at the moment. In many countries, there's a big shortage in radiologists. So that is something that's definitely not true. I think it was also not true is that we right now have, autonomous systems that are able to make decisions on large amounts of integrated data all by themselves. I think that is a pipe dream. I think we will be able to get to autonomous systems for very specific tasks, but we are nowhere near that at the moment for several reasons. But that's definitely something that we are not at the moment. If you look at our own product, for example, if you look Veye Chest, which is helping radiologists with the detection of nodules on chest CTs with the purpose of early detection of lung cancer, that is currently certified as a second reader. So it's helping the radiologist, augmenting them to make their job better, so qualitative improvement, and also to make them faster, so they are more productive. And it helps you provide clinical parameters like 3D segmentations or volumes that would be very cumbersome or almost impossible to do without software. So it's helping from a lot of productivity angles.
Yeah, but many have claimed, many have buzzed, and many have hyped for autonomous solutions. Many still have a lot of work to do to get there.
Absolutely.
Okay, so then we get to where we are today. So we are seeing several developments in the types of different technologies, different solutions. You just touched upon autonomous solutions. What do systems currently do? What do they offer to radiologists?
So, well, you can look at applications or the state of the market in different ways, right? And one of the most relevant here is, I think, the autonomy level, as we touched upon. If you make the kind of standard comparison with self-driving cars, there you have 5 autonomy levels. And currently, the cars that are actually driving on the road, none of them has been certified to be fully autonomous, not even in a limited way. They are driver assist systems. And I think that analogy perfectly fits radiology as well.
So it's assistive technology.
Yes. And there are thoughts about how we could get to a higher autonomy level. And the FDA, for example, just organized a conference to discuss on how it would regulate such a system, because it's quite, at this moment, quite unclear what kind of accuracy levels you would require of it, what kind of studies you would need to do, what kind of liability aspects that entails, and also a more fundamental question: do you even need that, or do you even want that? Because for which type of application is it necessary or useful to have a system that actually does it for you? Mm-hmm. But at the moment, in clinical practice, that is very, very limited.
So, assistive technologies, there are several types of companies out there developing platforms with multiple solutions. Companies like ours that are focusing on one specific thing. They're pure platform or basically infrastructure companies. What's the state of these? What do you see there?
Well, I think all of these companies are trying to solve an emerging problem that is going to be addressed in the next couple of years, is that, say, hospitals would prefer not to have to deal with 30 different applications and 30 different vendors and different contracts and different IT integrations and etc. Note that it's nowhere near where we are now. So this is a problem that we are not encountering in clinical practice. We are nearly always the first and only AI application that is actually done, so you can perfectly well get started with it. Mm-hmm. But if you're looking at in a couple of years in the future, you can see that this is going to be an issue. So what is going to happen is that indeed these platforms will combine, and the PACS vendors will also have an important role in this, to combine applications in some kind of clusters or have some kind of standard way of exchanging data between the AI vendors and the PACS systems and any other user interface that the radiology would be using. So I expect a lot of activity in the standard setting area to enable this, and also some clustering of companies together to create some kind of a package or a curated set of algorithms that together make sense for a hospital to basically get all of them at once.
Yeah, so there's a lot of companies out there. What we've seen out there is that there are the platform players who are developing a lot of features and a lot of applications. Most of it is actually still in research, or some have actually been validated or certified in the market. Where do you feel that most of these parties are now? Are they in the research phase, or do you have something that's actually working? Where are we with
Well, if you look at how many booths there were at the RSNA, there's 200-300 companies that are active in the space. Mm-hmm. But of course, if you look at all the modalities and all the body parts and all the pathologies that you could detect on medical images, it's tens of thousands. So if you look at it from that perspective, actually there's still a lot to be done. So companies that are currently exhibiting at the trade shows, a lot of them are still early stage. So there's a lot of research going on, and they're just trying out what is going to work and what isn't going to work. Mm-hmm. There are, say several dozen, I would say, that actually have something that is certified either in the US or in Europe or in different China, and that's actually then available for clinical use.
Yeah. So there are a lot of companies still a lot of hype, but the first solution are actually now being introduced and being used in clinical practice.
Definitely. I mean, we have live sites in a number of European countries right now that's actually being done in clinical practice. So it is being used, but it's not that widespread yet.
No. So the fact that it's being used is the start. If you look at who's paying for this now, and where do budgets come from? What do we see in the industry?
Well, at the moment, because AI is so new and because it's not yet part of the standard, say, budgeting cycle as you would typically have in a hospital, that means that budgets are typically coming from, they are found in different ways, so to speak. And this is also something that is a hindrance to adoption, to be completely honest, because it's all new and the money doesn't fall out of the sky. So I think that is one of the big trends that we will see over the next couple of years, is that payers will start to organize and to realize that if there are AI applications that have a proven return on investment, it makes sense to have this application in there, then I think we will flip from, say, small-scale adoption to suddenly widespread adoption, which will be helped a lot by reimbursement or payer systems actually picking up the bill to introduce this on a national or international scale. Mm-hmm. That is not happening at the moment, but it is definitely going to happen in the near future.
Yeah, so all these first installations, they basically have to develop the evidence for the ROI of these solutions first before we see wide-scale adoption.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a healthy skepticism, I would say, around that, to say, okay, first show us that it actually works. So in clinical practice, in large-scale adoption, create evidence, and then we'll see, how that's going to get funded.
Okay. Last point: regulatory status. AI is new, and
it is new. Yeah. So there's so you could look at it two ways, right? AI is a medical device. So we have very extensive regulations around medical devices. So also for software as a medical device. So in that sense, it's not different. And that's all the products that are on the market at this moment are certified according to the existing rules. But very basically where we want to go with AI, what makes AI different, is that of course it has the capability of continuing to learn after it has been certified. Now the systems right now don't do that, but that's where we want to go, because that has huge potential to keep increasing the accuracy of a system by incorporating the feedback of the readers. I mean, imagine how great it is if every time the radiologist provides feedback to say, okay, you missed something, or I corrected something, or actually, no, it was great. That information is then taken and the system adjusts itself to become better. And not only the radiologists within one specific hospital contribute to that, but all the hospitals across the world who are connected to the same system make each other better, and together they make a system that is better than all of them, so to speak. Yeah. But it's clear from a regulatory perspective that that's not where we are yet. And I mentioned the FDA conference earlier. This is precisely one of the topics that they are now debating. How do we regulate this? Because of course it's very important that the quality of the system can only go up and not go down. Yeah. So how do you make sure that happens? And there's a lot of questions around that, but looking ahead over the next 5 years, I think that those questions will be answered and those systems will be on the market.
Quality assurance of the data input for the quality of the algorithm and patient data. Those are crucial.
And the patient consent, of course, right? Yeah. Being very careful with the privacy concerns about the permission to use the data to improve the system. Also being very clear and transparent about communicating this to patients, what is actually happening with their data and why. And of course, the security implications as well is that data is being moved from one system to another. So you have to make sure there's no data breaches and people who are not supposed to be able to see that data, they can't. So all of these things have to be taken into consideration.
As with any innovation, I guess the industry is going faster than the regulation, and the regulators are now trying to work with the vendors to basically define the new, regulatory standards for this.
Indeed.
Okay. So that's the current state?
Yeah.
Where do we go from here? So we've talked a bit about these autonomy levels, where we are today and what's going to happen over the next 5 years. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
I mentioned the autonomy levels that you can distinguish. So as being a second reader, so as an assistant, you could also go to a first reader, where the software does the first read, and then the radiologist remains responsible for the report, but kind of reviews the findings that the AI had. And next level would be a rule-out system. So especially in a screening environment, you can imagine that if 90% of the scans are negative, it would be a huge productivity boost if AI would be able to rule out the 90% that have no findings, so that the radiologists can spend their time on only the 10% that actually are worthy of their attention, so to speak.
Is this something that the industry is already looking for?
Definitely. If you're looking at, for example, screening programs across Europe that are being set up right now, is that one of the biggest challenges for these screening programs to be implemented is simply the capacity of the radiologists. So they simply don't have the people to be able to run such a program. So in that sense, you could argue that having AI is a requirement to even consider having such a program. So I think it's very important that is why this keeps getting developed and these regulations become clear on how when is it safe to do this and under what conditions.
Why would autonomous levels or autonomy, full autonomy of AI not work in routine clinical practice?
Well, the question is if you would want that, because I think the question you have there is very different, and also the patient population you have is very different. So for screening, you're trying to answer a very specific question, but in routine practice, I mean, of course, there can be hundreds of different reasons of why a scan is made. And I think it would be, too much to ask, but also not very effective to try and answer all those questions with AI systems. I think humans are extremely good at integrating data from different sources and finding the weird exceptions and rare cases, and whereas AI is very good at, say, the standard work, routine stuff that is very similar from one case to the next. So say detecting things, segmenting things, triaging maybe, classifying things. These are tasks that it would make sense that you have an AI to do that for you, because you can see on the study basis that if you have enough training data and if you develop it well, it will do it on at least the level as a human reader. And of course, it's easy to scale.
Yeah.
So I think there it makes a lot of sense.
But technology by the next 5 years will not be capable of doing generalizable tasks for full CT chest reach, for example.
No, and I honestly wonder if that is also where you want to focus your attention, because I think one thing that would be much more interesting is trying to combine different data sources. So until now we've been talking about radiology images. So there's one image and then you try and infer things on that. But of course, from a patient or from a treatment perspective, there's much more data. There's the patient records, there may be pathology slides, there may be a PET scan, there may be other sources of data. And you can imagine that what software is good at is combining data sources on a pixel level, and to see if there's anything that you can learn from combining that.
So basically, that's where you're already touching upon our next slide: the impact of AI on a workflow. Integrating data sets and integrating different silos or different parts of the care pathway.
Yeah, I think this is I think a little further out. But I think there is a promise there, and also integrating multiple data sets across the pathway is one aspect. The other one is when you think about, say, holistic imaging, is that one of the things, for example, that we are working on at Aidence is also to add coronary calcium scoring on the chest CT, because on the same scan that has the lungs, obviously you also can image a heart, and we know that the risk groups overlap a lot between lung cancer and coronary disease. So it makes sense to be able to deliver that. But when you do that, say from a clinical pathway, it's quite different, because one, say, customer of that would be the pulmonologist and the other would be the cardiologist. So how does then having a kind of holistic diagnostic in there influence or change the clinical pathway? Do you want that? When does it make sense and when does it not make sense? So I think there is an opportunity for AI to ask questions on how do we, say, most effectively organize the diagnostic pathway.
Mm-hmm. So then we get to the last point: how will it impact the clinical part of basically where AI is active? Because now we've talked about combining different data sets, but what are the capabilities of AI going down the road? It's radiology reporting. Where could it go from here?
Well, for a short term, I think there's a couple of reasons why AI is useful. And I think we are nowhere near yet on maximizing that. So let's first do that. So can we make things more efficient? Can we make readings faster? Can we do it with a rule out in certain cases or not? And can we improve the quality? Can we make sure that we don't miss anything anymore? Can we be more accurate on our measurements, etc.? Can we create new measurements that basically were not possible without AI? I think there's a lot of potential there that's still not being utilized at this moment. And the example I gave previously is like for screening programs. If you look at the templates, for example, that a radiologist is required to fill out for a lung cancer screening, it's quite exhaustive, which is very good from a quality perspective. But of course, it also means that it takes quite some time. And it basically becomes almost impossible to do this if there is no good AI system in place. So I think the clinical impact of AI will be on the short term that it enables a type of diagnostics that simply we did not have before.
And more detailed diagnostics give the potential of better follow-up, better treatments,
of course,
cheaper treatments potentially as well.
Yeah, so why are you doing the diagnostics? To have a benefit further down in the pathway, right? So if you find a nodule earlier, you can then potentially operate a patient in a stage 1 and cure them, whereas if you are later, that option no longer exists. So there's a strong health benefit, of course, to be able to do this.
So the impact could be to provide better, earlier and more targeted treatments with more information that the AI provides.
Absolutely.
Okay. We're getting another question from an anonymous person. So the question is, you shared your ambition for the next 5 years. What would set you aside from big cannons like Siemens or Google who also invest in AI for medical imaging? Well, that's an interesting question.
Yeah, what sets us apart? Well, I think the fact that we are a startup is by itself a differentiator because large companies move at the speed of large companies. Startups move at the speed of startups. And I think one of the things that is we are very invested in the success of our customers. So if we don't make them win, we don't win. And of course, large companies pay lip service to this as well. But I think as a company that is directly involved, I mean, I talk to customers every week, you talk to them every week. So we are directly involved in how this works and how we can make it a success for them.
I think what we've already shown, for example, with our lung cancer applications, like there was a demand for a reporting tool next to the AI part. That's a good example of being a startup. When we noticed that there was a demand across different customers, within 2 months we actually developed a whole reporting feature. This is something that's unheard of in large companies because they simply do not have that agility to deliver things like this as fast as we do. So
Indeed.
That definitely sets us apart.
Which does not mean that we don't want to work with them, right? They're happy. We are most happy for them to distribute our product.
Yeah, so we are working with larger vendors like the GEs, the Sectras, Agfas. We're integrated with all of those vendors, but they could benefit from our agility and our speed of delivery to offer something that their customers then can use.
So coming back to the radiologists, what do you see as their role in all of this? All this new technology is being rolled out, and so what is their role going to be? Well, they're not going to be replaced, we established that, so but are they going to do? What is their role?
So there's different parts, right? So what we described as well, the radiologists, they are sitting behind the computers, they're sitting behind the systems, and right now they are reading their scans and they're reporting this. With our AI tooling, they can also start providing input so that we can improve the AI algorithms. So they will become trainers of the AI. Again, not to just replace themselves, because we will not be able to just do all these edge cases, which they are very good at doing, but they will help improve the systems to provide even more accurate care. Another thing that we will see happening is because the AI starts to provide information across the different specialties, the other physicians like the pulmonologist or the oncologist, radiologists will get more time because the AI saves them time. They will get more time to work with other practitioners to provide better care to patients. And we're already seeing this actually in several of the hospitals. Because we help them provide more detailed reports on nodules, their interaction with pulmonologists or oncologists becomes more intense because they can use that information from the AI to make better decisions for the treatments. And the radiologists still have to confirm this information from the AI. Yep. So they will create a feedback loop, but they all will also be more involved in the clinical pathway deeper down the line for several treatments. So those are key components that we're seeing.
And I think also act as customers, right? What is, as I said, there are like tens of thousands of applications that you could be doing. Yeah. So what do radiologists feel is has the most benefit to them? That, which problems are there that you could solve with AI?
Yes, so they will provide us input to develop solutions that will have a broader impact than what we're offering right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was basically the end of this presentation. We thank you for participating. Again, if you have any questions, don't be afraid to send us an email or ask a question in the chat on our live channel. The last presentation is going to come up, and see you soon.
Thanks for watching.